Hey YouTube, thanks for checking into our channel.
I'm Bobby, aka Bot.
And I'm the Con, aka James. And this is... All right, so for this episode, we are going to be talking about the TFcon exclusive Delta, Baser, and Magna Bomber. But before we get to the meat and potatoes of this program, I wanted to go ahead and give a little bit of background behind the character itself, namely Delta Magnus. So everybody knows Delta Magnus is the Diaclone repaint of Ultra Magnus. And this was named Powered Convoy way back before even Transformers was a thing. And this is quite interesting with the color scheme because it looks a lot like Optimus Prime, which is why they probably changed the colors for the movie. Now, this is a promotional image of the original G1 movie where you can see Ultra Magnus in the Delta Magnus colors, but I honestly think they changed those colors to fit more in line with somebody different than Optimus Prime because I think the colors are much too similar.
I would have literally thought if I saw a commercial with this that something happened to Optimus Prime and he was reborn or rebuilt as this character. So thanks for clearing that up.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's why they did it, because at that time, the audience was only kids. There was no adult collectors. So they really needed to put a emphasis on a different character.
Yeah.
But where does he fit in with the lore, the Hasbro's lore and Transformers in general? Well, the first really instance of Delta Magnus as a character was from the Dreamwave comics, where he is a clone created by Shockwave. And in this story arc, Shockwave also creates a clone of Starscream as Sunstorm, and chaos ensues. But he's not really seen much as a main character. It's more of just a background character to show, hey, there's multiple clones. But where he really got his comeuppance was in the Masterpiece comic that came with his Masterpiece toy. Now, this shows that Delta Magnus, was actually a suit of armor that was worn by different bots. The original Delta Magnus was part of the Primal Vanguard, which was tasked with keeping the Matrix and other Autobot relics safe. And he actually kept the Matrix safe when Optimus was going to get it. Before Optimus got it. So it was he had a very big role in the Transformers story. It's just you don't see them because they're more of an off-world peacekeeping type of organization. So that's the majority of his character. And I believe they also touched on it in IDW, where he's part of the Magnus House, where Ultra Magnus is also a part of, which also traded their armor throughout the ages. Now the original, or the current reigning Delta Magnus is Power Drive, which was actually a little red Diaclone car that came with his toy.
See, all of that made absolutely no sense to me as a G1er that is old now and watching it as a kid. I would have been lost with this story back then, I think, but it's cool to hear the backstory about the character. I had no idea it was this complicated. I literally thought that they just put a Prime in the toy because it was a cab and it was easy for them to just color it a different color to make Ultra Magnus as a toy. That was as far as my feeble mind went to as a kid.
Now, I kind of have this in steps just to show some pictures of what we're looking at. And this is the first, and I absolutely adore this small figure. With all of the power basers, I really like the inner robot.
Now, that was kind of the opposite for me. I really did not like, or I don't like the chest part of the inner robot. That gap in between the grill and kind of his sides, I wish they would have cleaned that up a little bit more. Otherwise, I like the figure, but that part has always kind of been a stickler of mine, which I was happy to transform him and add on his armor.
I can see that. I can forgive it because it gives him such an amazing ab crunch, which I love in all of my toys, and when Transformers and third party started incorporating that more into their figures as a standard, it makes the world of a difference to me. So I can forgive it, and I like this sizing a little bit better for my shelves and whatnot. And I would personally, if I could, I'd buy another one of these standalone without all the trailers and whatnot, just to have this figure in any of the colors. I love this standalone figure. And then go on.
No, that this is actually where I was going to get to. This is the part that I actually like, this part of the figure.
Yes. And what I love about the TFcon exclusive is the different options you have. You have the traditional Magnus shoulder rockets on one side, and on the other side, you have the more traditional power baser guns. And I think that's a really cool combination between the two, and that you can choose. Now, I'm always going to use the Magnus blasters, but that's just me.
I hate to agree with you there, but I completely do. When I saw that option, I was just like, that's beautiful. Plus the bright red, which is actually matching the red in the guns as well, the rifles on top. It just really highlights the detail in this character. I love how the blue and the yellow are also radiant from the cab, but also flow through to the trailer. It's a superb color scheme. I really also like the yellow windows. That was probably when they started hinting at the exclusive. That was what caught my attention the most, was those yellow windows, because usually you see a blue or something or a darker window. This yellow really pops.
Yes, and I think that's something that I didn't realize. Yellow is such a big color for Delta Magnus as a character. I have the KFC version of Delta Magnus as well, and that one is missing yellow, and it always looked like it was missing something, and I think that's what it was. So I think that is a very good thing to point out, is the pop of yellow, especially with the what's that called? The engine master. I can't think of the name off the top of my head.
The Power Master.
Power Master, there you go.
Yeah.
Putting him as bright yellow not only works for the Diaclone aesthetic, but it also works for this. And I also wanted to give a shout out to Get Right Robo for actually redesigning the guns. I didn't realize they were redesigned until I looked at them.
Yeah.
That is amazing. The minute details of those guns just make it pop just so much more.
Well, I had the pleasure of speaking with him prior to the release and leading up to it. And he mentioned, without giving it away, he just mentioned how much detail he put into this figure and all the changes and all the custom parts and things like that. So he really did an amazing job getting all this stuff together. So Get Right Robot, you get a A+ from me on this.
A++. And then, so this is a base mode. I just threw this in here. I'm not the biggest fan of this, but it looks cool regardless.
With this mode, I wish there was more color in this mode. The blue arms really stick out, but everything else looks like it's unfinished or grayscaled, almost as if it's a render or an official character that was being made. So I probably will stay away from the base mode with my figure.
I completely agree, but I understand why they wouldn't put too much paint on this part, because you do have to cut costs somewhere. And honestly, this is the mode that I think the least amount of people are going to have it in.
I can see that.
Okay.
Hey, we're supposed to be debating here. We can't agree on this stuff.
We chose the wrong figure to start off with. I'm just going to say that.
We definitely did.
So this is the combined mode. Again, I think it's flawless. For the character, as I don't know, I think it's Magna Convoy is actually the inner robot of Delta Magnus. I could be incorrect, but I think it looks amazing. I wish I was able to find a picture with the actual shoulder-mounted Delta cannons, but I think they did this on purpose so it looks more like the inner robot. And there he is.
I went ahead and did that for you without even knowing.
Yeah, see, I think it looks so much more unique than the other power racers out there.
It really does. And later in the video, I'll go ahead and share some of my other power basers that I have. But yeah, this red just really pops. And what's really cool about it is that there's not much red anywhere else but on the weapon.
Well, and what's also cool about it is they had the forethought to say, well, some people might not like the red, and they added silver missiles to it as well.
Yes.
And I think that's really cool because I think the original one had silver missiles in it. I mean, I could go back, but I think it had silver missiles actually in it. So you could have it be like a G1 toy accurate figure, or you can have it more of a more current figure with more color and whatnot.
And honestly, typically I'm 1000% G1er. This red just really popped for me, and I think that's what made me go with the red over the silver missiles.
Yeah.
And it was just something more so for the presence on the shelf, more so than the the aesthetics of being a G1er.
Yeah. Well, the good thing about this figure is he was technically never in G1 the cartoon, so you could do whatever you want with him.
Yeah, you're completely right there, and that's actually how I felt about it. G1-ish.
Yes.
That's about it.
And then here's a Magna Bomber. I quite enjoy this figure. I think all the colors that we just talked about work, and I love that it's mostly red on the top with blue at the bottom. But I think it's amazing what they were able to do with this actual figure.
I really like this figure as well. My only hang up, and this is not due to the character, it's just with all the power basers, the feet look really skinny and the legs look really thick, but on video or looking at the screenshot, in person though, it actually looks a lot better.
Yes, I completely agree. It's probably the angle of this actual picture, but I think in person, I don't have any problems with this figure. It is a little wobbly, but it kind of needs to be for what it does, which I think, here's its alt mode right here, which is actually really nice. It gives me really strong Prime vibes, honestly. Optimus Prime vibes.
I am not a fan of the vehicle mode.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I had the original toy with the extended cab, and even as a kid, I didn't like that either. And it was just too long and too much, it seemed like.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess my thoughts haven't changed as I got older. It's a cool feature, but I didn't really like it on my shelf in this alt mode.
Yes, I think it is a very strange alt mode. I think what the original Takara designers were going for was an autonomous character that would go around and like he was a robot. He wasn't a transformer, and he'd help Ginrai out, which is why there's no cab. But I think it's a very strange alt mode. But I like strange things, so this works for me.
Yeah, I was thinking, I remember as a kid, I was thinking that it was a plane that was attached to it. I saw those big wings. So I thought that the wings would slide down and maybe something would pop up and it would turn into a plane. So it was going to be like a triple changer.
That would be very cool and would make a ton more sense.
That's what, yeah. So as a kid, I remember thinking that and wanting that. And maybe that's what led to my disappointment, was my own inner thoughts of thinking this was a new triple changer, and not getting that as a kid.
That makes sense. Yeah. All right. And then of course we have his little sidekicks, which are headmasters in this, besides the Power Master, and they're based off the Diaclone drivers, which I just adore. That's the perfect homage that they could have done with these headmasters.
I love the idea of the Power Masters, or the headmasters and the Power Master. The colors, while I love the bright colors, it made me think of Power Rangers, which I hated Power Rangers as a kid. I'm sorry for all the people who love Power Rangers, but I remember when Power Rangers started, I was thinking that this was going to be the new Voltron, and it was definitely not. And so when I opened this up and I saw all these bright colors, the first thing I thought about was Power Rangers.
All right, and then here is the main event. It's everything combined, and I think this looks gorgeous. I know in our last video, I said that I think he should have red toes, but after doing some research on Delta Magnus, this is perfect. The only thing he needs is some shoulder pylons, but I think that would have been way too much work for them to actually put into it.
This, and granted, I do not display mine in Power Baser in the full armored mode, and there's a reason, because I have some other Power Basers that are in that mode, so I wanted to kind of show the differences on my shelf. I actually really like those colors. It did make me really think of a souped up Optimus Prime though. And I have the Optimus Prime Power Baser as well, so I'll bring that out. But that's the only thing that I wanted to have some differences. I do wish there was more yellow on this. I mentioned earlier on that I love the pop of yellow on the cab mode and things, and I wish there was some more yellow here, or that the yellow shine through on his chest or something like that. That is probably my only nitpicking on this figure. Otherwise, I think it's a great looking figure.
I would agree that the yellow windows on the chest would actually look pretty good. I don't know why they went with blue, but the blue doesn't look bad either. It actually looks kind of cool with the little guys sticking through it with the blue. They're more muted. So that might be why, but overall, I really like this.
This was really, really cool. Again, I just think he outdid himself with the design of this. The different facial expressions are great, and just the options to have more. I was amazed, and heading into TFcon, this was the one that I knew I had to have. If I missed out on anything else, this was the one that I was not going to miss out on.
I was right there with you.
They went all out on this, and I'm glad, because typically with exclusives, they may add, a color here or something like that. But they actually added a lot to this, and it didn't raise the price obnoxiously.
No, and that's what I was surprised with, is when I got my Fire Guts version, actually at TFcon LA, it was $310. This was only $25 more with all of these extra parts. So people were complaining about the price I saw online, but I'm like, it's the same price practically as the other ones that have been released.
Yes, I completely agree. And that's the other reason, again, conversation with Get Right Robot, he told me it was going to be pricey, and I was a little scared. And again, he just mentioned that it was going to be a combiner, and I was like, okay, kind of pricey. What does that mean? And when I heard the price, I was like, oh, give me 3. Okay, I can't, but this I feel like this was a steal of a deal with this figure.
All right, and I think this is our final shot of the figure. So we're going to take a little break and get our figures out, and we're going to be reviewing them with a kind of scoring system for you guys. So we're going to stop for now, and we'll see you guys in a bit.
All right, so now comes the fun part. We're actually going to rate the figure on what we call TV pad, and that's going to be for the transformation, the value for the figure, the playability, the articulation, and the deco. Now, each area is going to be graded on a 10-point scale for a total overall possibility of 50 points for a figure. So I don't know what James rated his figure. He doesn't know what I've rated mine. Hopefully we have a good debate here and we don't agree on too much. We both seem to love this figure, but let's see where those numbers fall in on our scale.
All right, so why don't we just get into it with the transformation? I rated this a 7. I love the whole transformation, even the combining gimmick, but the one part I have that is a big part of it is putting the small cab into the bigger robot when you combine it. I have always have trouble every single time with that, so I had to knock it down a little bit, but everything else is smooth, especially on this Delta Magnus. It was so much smoother than on my orange power baser. This guy was a pain to put everything together, but everything was very smooth on him.
So transformation for me, I gave it an 8, which isn't too far off for you, but for different reasons. The hardest part for me on the figure was actually clipping in this back part, attaching the cab to the trailer. It felt like I was trying to squeeze a watermelon or something like that together. It was very, very tight to get these in, and hopefully that loosens up with multiple transformations. But that's probably the hardest part there. And one of the other things that kind of bothers me, I don't know if this would necessarily go with the transformation or more so with articulation, but attaching these swords to the side here, they don't stay on, even though they are kind of right now. And if I shake it, it seems like, okay, there we go. Mm-hmm. I thought it was going to make me look like a liar here, but trying to keep those on during transformation and moving is a pain. I wish they were a little bit, I wish they were stuck on a little bit easier.
I agree with both of those points. And I think the part with the back is actually due to the cab not fitting in correctly. Because once I finagled it, it finally clipped in. But as for the swords, that is another part that I have an issue with. All right, so I think we might be the same on this because we already talked about this, but for the value, I gave it a 10. For the price, you're never going to get nothing like this. I don't think you can contest that at all.
No, we're right in the line there with a 10 there as well.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know about you, but I love to play with my toys. That's one of my, I don't consider them collectibles. I consider them toys. And as far as this figure, I think it is amazing with the playability. You have 3 different modes it combines. And for me, I love that. I love that it has small figures. It has the big figure. It has the combined mode. There's so many ways to display this, so many ways to play with it that it's perfect.
I gave this a 10 on playability as well. This is a figure that I don't feel like, I'm going to break if I transform it too much. It's not complicated. As you mentioned, each mode is a different experience. So I feel like I can have, and honestly, I collect toys. That's what it is. Yeah. So these are my collectible toys. So I actually do enjoy playing with them as well. The joints and everything move really well. So I don't feel like I will ever do anything that's going to mess up the figure. So I feel like I can actually manipulate it over and over again.
Yes, and I think that's something with Fans Hobby in general, is they make their toys so you could play with them. Unlike some of the other companies that we're probably going to talk about on the show eventually, that they're covered in paint and they're a little hard to, or scary to play with.
Exactly. Yeah, and I don't feel like I'm going to scratch anything here.
Yes. All right, Bobby, do you want to cover the articulation first?
Articulation, I gave it a 7 for articulation. And the only reason, and maybe that also lies with the swords, but it's a pretty blocky figure. for the most part, it's heavy. And so, the legs, when I have it in the fully combined mode with the ab crunch, even though there's some die cast in there, I feel like I got to watch it and what positions I put it into, because I feel like it might top over or something like that, especially with all the armor on there. It's very heavy. Yeah. So I do kind of have a little bit of scare there. I haven't seen it tip or anything like that, so I could be completely wrong. It just feels very heavy, and I don't want to experience it falling over. I do. Some of my other power basers have fallen over with that because of that.
Yes, and that's something that I also took into account. Now, I'm different than you. I gave it a 9 because I could almost get this at any pose I want to. I do forgive it a little bit when it's in the powered up armor mode because there's so much going on. But it always seems like with both of them that I have, it always leans back and the feet can't go forward, which worries me with it falling, like you said. So I guess that would be another. No, I'm gonna stick with a 9 though, because I can forgive it. And like we already discussed, I really like that inner robot, and that thing is articulated to the max. So I think it even has butterfly joints. So for the transformation, and I absolutely adore it. So I'm going to stick with a 9.
I can see that. Okay. And our last category would be the deco, and I gave it a 10. I think throughout this video we've talked about the colors and how everything blends together well, and I mean it's just an amazing figure. In all modes, the color is amazing in all 3 modes. The detail, and I mean, I'm just kind of looking here, and I'm just amazed. And I have, the Jinrai, I have the Black Power Baser here as well, and among all 3 that I have, this is by far my favorite. Just the color scheme is amazing.
Yes, and I also gave it a 10 for the deco. I love that it has all this, I guess, Cybertronian writing on it, but it doesn't say anything. I guess it says MB-06, right?
MB-06, yeah.
And that's it. I think on some of their other ones, I don't know if it's. No, it's not. But they don't say anything, and that's cool because I know there's other figures like we got the sniper rifle and it says warrior on his chest and stuff like that, and I don't like that because it shouldn't say English. But I think this is immaculate with all the colors. I wouldn't the only thing I would change would be the yellow, but I still gave it a 10 because I think even without the yellow it looks amazing. And it also gives a little bit of variety between the 2 modes. So I say 10s across the board for this thing, with a few little knocks for the mold itself. And like you said, I wouldn't be able to pick between this and my Fire Guts as which one's my favorite, because I love the Fire Guts. I love how neon and crazy it is. But if I was probably had to pick one of them, it would be this one, just because it's kind of more muted. You could put it in more shelves.
Yeah. This one, it's the colors just pop all the way around, and that's probably the biggest thing for me. And it definitely has its Superman-esque to it, so it definitely feels like the ultimate hero here, and the color scheme. And so yeah, this is a great figure. I'm glad I picked it up.
Yeah. All right, so what is your total score? Did you calculate that?
I actually gave it a 45.
Okay, I gave it a 46.
And that's pretty close there. I don't like us agreeing so much.
Well, I think that we were going to agree on this regardless. It's one of the TFcon exclusives, and it just looks amazing. I don't think that we were going to disagree on this one, honestly. The next video, I think we're going to. But as far as this, I think we're good to go. I think this is going to be in both of our collections for a very, very long time.
Exactly. And I would have it no other way. I think when we talked about going to TFcon and seeing the exclusives, we had already agreed that this was a must-have for our collections. So anyone out there that's fortunate enough to get one, great. If you haven't had a chance to get one, I'm sorry. It's definitely worth the money if you can get your hands on one.
Yes, I'm very sorry you didn't get this. Hopefully you didn't want it. Hopefully it's not something that you wanted, because I don't. It would be hard for me not to have this in my collection, even if I didn't go to Chicago. I try to get it.
I agree. And I think this was probably one of the things that made me go to Chicago.
Yeah, I wouldn't say made me go, but I said would make me excited. When I saw that, I was like, yes, I'm getting something that I want, because I was worried that it was going to not be something that I actually wanted, but it was something that I definitely wanted.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the next con and seeing what other exclusives they have. But I'm sure between now and then we will have all types of discussions of Transformers leading up to that.
Exactly. It's going to be interesting. If they could do this, I want to see what they're going to do next.
I do too.
All right, guys. Well, that was our look at the God Delta TFcon exclusive by Fans Hobby and the Chosen Prime. If you have any questions, please put them down below and we'll be happy to answer them. And let us know what you'd like to see next, or within the next few episodes. We have a few already planned out, but let us know what you'd like to see.